The first Final Fantasy threw us for a loop in the end. Get it? Ever since, a tradition has been established where the big wow moment can often come to define each game in the series. Most of them have several moments to choose from, and as such I had to create a quick set of rules to follow for this list. Number 1, there will be no endings or intros because they get lists of their own. Number 2, I'm going to stick to only one moment per game. Again, we can do lists later on for things that get left out. Number 3, I won't be including anything from the multiverse, like the Chrono games or Kingdom Hearts, like I so often enjoyed doing. Again, more lists later. And number 4, spoiler warning. We're talking big moments, so there's going to be some stuff up ahead. If you haven't played the game, maybe skip that particular entry. My name is Drew Kreisman. I am one half of the Final Fantasy Weekly podcast, and these are my picks for the top 10 wow moments in Final Fantasy history. Number 10. Final Fantasy XIV Endwalker existing at all. Let's begin with a meta moment. One of the most incredible things that has ever happened in the history of the franchise is the fact that Final Fantasy XIV went from unmitigated disaster to one of the most universally celebrated video games of all time. The development team, led by the increasingly famous Yoshi P, destroyed then salvaged their fictional world, turning it into a grand adventure that players around the globe have been getting lost in for over a decade. It all culminated in the release of the Endwalker expansion, which was so beloved and so successful that Square Enix had to stop selling and even marketing the game, as millions of people waited, sometimes for hours on end, for their chance to visit Eorzea. Number 9. Gallops' Sacrifice from Final Fantasy V. Contrary to popular belief, a certain Final Fantasy VII heroine was not the first character in the series to give the ultimate noble sacrifice for the cause. There were a few in Final Fantasy IV, some of which we discussed in the Saddest Moments Top 10, but Gallops' turn to take one for the team was an important landmark in the franchise. It was shocking and emotional and lasting. The series has since made a habit of breaking our hearts with ever-evolving executions of this same concept, but this one is as good as any of them. Number 8. Going to the Moon, Final Fantasy IV. What makes Final Fantasy special? What sets it apart? There's an ever-increasing and wondrous array of fantasy stories with dragons and magics and adventure, but few of them are bold enough to casually introduce whale spaceships into the mix. In an abrupt shift in tone, and arguably genre, the fourth game in the franchise made it abundantly clear that you never know exactly what's around the next corner in a Final Fantasy story. Complete with jaw-dropping visuals, for the time, and stellar music, because of course, this unforgettable moment allowed our warriors of light and us, the audience, to be free of the burdens of practicality and the pressures of literally being grounded. We take to the stars and dare to dream among them. Number 7. The Death Star Run, Final Fantasy XII. This Evolution epic is often compared to Star Wars, and, at least from us, that is meant as a massive compliment. This scene near the end of 12 feels remarkably similar to the Death Star run at the end of A New Hope. A frantically paced airship battle featuring so many moving pieces, it's tough to keep track of them all, while our heroes remain singularly focused on a central point of potential victory. This set piece could make some of the most successful Hollywood action directors jealous with how well it balances all the important story, character, and thematic elements without sacrificing one bit of the action. Number 6. Garden vs. Garden, Final Fantasy VIII. So, the two military schools that can fly engage in a massive battle that features what I can only describe as motorcycle launchers. This is the greatest series of all time. Somewhere right near the middle of Final Fantasy VIII, we get one of the coolest, pure, hype-inducing action sequences in series history. From frantically delivering orders as the battle begins, to racing around the grounds trying to take care of several mini-disasters, to the climactic moments featuring some death-defying saving of Rinoa, it's excellent storytelling in addition to being wondrous spectacle. Also, did I mention they were flying through the air on motorcycles? In addition to mech jetpack thingies whisking about while monsters and elite soldiers clash around sweeping camera movements that take us in and out of gameplay? Whew! Great stuff. Number 5. The Battle of Altaria, Final Fantasy XV. The natural evolution of that kind of spectacle hit its peak, that is, at least until Final Fantasy XVI comes out, with this sequence. Leviathan and Titan square off in the middle of the Great Water City, while our heroes and villain race to swing the moment in their favor. What is special about this scene compared to others on this list is how dramatically it shifts in tone. There's a massive fight. Noctis becomes godlike, the music gets turned up well past 11, and we are filled with adrenaline. But it all comes crashing down in the aftermath, when the wow stops being the spectacle and becomes the quiet beauty. In a painting come to life, our protagonist can only reach for a love that never was, can only bask for a moment in the past never fulfilled. It has to say goodbye. Number 4. Alexander vs. Bahamut, Final Fantasy IX. Our second eye-popping moment in a row to feature summons fighting each other, it's hard to explain to anyone who didn't witness it back in its time just how mind-blowing this was. It had everything. A dramatic climax for our characters and story, a few twists and surprises, and that classic Final Fantasy spectacle that makes your jaw fall to the floor as you mutter something along the lines of, "I've never seen anything like that before." As a single image, the moment that Bahamut and Alexander face off is one of the most incredible and iconic in franchise history, arguably all of gaming. A picture worth 9,999 words. Number 3. Yunus Sending, Final Fantasy X. Not all wow moments make you stand up and cheer. Some make you sit down and think. Final Fantasy X has no shortage of scenes that are worthy of inclusion on a list like this, but it's hard to top my personal feeling for Yunus Sending that I know is shared by much of the community. It remains to this day one of the most beautiful things I have ever seen. It is our early introduction to the spiral of sadness that encompasses Spira, of the tragedy that comes with being Summoner. This is masterful storytelling, told through gorgeous and unique visuals, and it helps make this masterpiece feel unlike anything else. Number 2. Kafka Destroys the World, Final Fantasy VI. It doesn't get a whole lot more shocking than bad guy wins by destroying the world and installing himself as supreme ruler. In the vast majority of speculative fiction, our heroes stop the villain from taking over the world just in time, but not this time. The psycho clown sidekick becomes the god of magic in a wow moment that I'm still kind of amazed even exists. We've never witnessed destruction on this scale in the mainline series, and arguably haven't since. It's brilliant because it's not a twist that preys upon red herrings or misdirection. We know the second we meet him that Kafka would kill anyone he met just for annoying him if he could. The conventions of stories led us to believe that we would stop him. And while of course we eventually defeat him, Kafka literally reshaped the entire world. And number 1, The Death of Aerith, Final Fantasy VII. I know. It's talked about a lot. I've already done it a lot. But that doesn't change the fact that this is perhaps the textbook definition of the wow moment for video games. It combines all of the elements that make each of these scenes so unforgettable. What happens is shocking and moving and emotional, but so is how it happens and why it happens. This is a moment that impacted the real world, drove Final Fantasy into the mainstream, and changed the medium forever. You can draw a straight line from the deep impact this moment had on people to the existence of great modern epics like God of War and The Last of Us. This was a moment that proved that video games could be as culturally significant and matter as much to us personally as our favorite films, television, and books. Thank you for watching and listening. Thank you to HBomb for editing and to Final Fantasy Piano Music for the music. For more Final Fantasy content, check out patreon.com/ffweekly, and for nerdy content of all other varieties, including Star Wars, A Song of Ice and Fire, Lord of the Rings, and more, check out patreon.com/DCProductions. Don't forget to subscribe and like down below to our channel and to all the contributors who help make it possible.